My wife's secret diary revealed why she refused intimacy for years. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. I sat at the edge of our bed, watching my wife sleep, holding the little leather book that proved my entire life was a lie. For 3 agonizing years, I had slept down the hall in the suffocating silence of our guest room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what on earth was wrong with me. I paid every single bill, cooked almost every meal, and tiptoed around her perfectly curated suburban life, terrified of triggering what she called her severe, debilitating anxiety. I believed I was being a good husband. I was endlessly patient. I was deeply understanding. And as it turns out, I was an absolute, undisputed fool. Have you ever apologized to someone for breaking your own heart? I had. Hundreds of times. Chloe was beautiful, fragile, and seemingly overwhelmed by the world. She told me the mere thought of physical intimacy sent her into a panic spiral. So, I suppressed my needs. I buried my own desires and self-worth to protect her mental health, convincing myself that true love meant unselfish sacrifice. I worked 60-hour weeks as a software architect to ensure she never had to stress about our finances. I funded her expensive therapy retreats and her endless shopping habits, thinking it would eventually help her heal. But the woman breathing softly under the expensive duvet right in front of me wasn't broken or anxious. She was a master manipulator. The small, worn journal trembling in my hands wasn't a diary of her healing journey. It was a meticulously detailed ledger of a sociopathic heist. She hadn't just been rejecting my body. She had been systematically stealing my future. Every denied kiss, every turned cheek, every tearful excuse was a calculated boundary designed to keep me at arm's length while she drained my bank accounts. She was funneling my hard-earned bonuses into a secret life I knew absolutely nothing about. The sickest part wasn't even the money. It was the fact that she was doing it with the one person she swore I never had to worry about. As I read the words written in her neat, looping handwriting, my profound grief instantly hardened into an icy, relentless fury. I realized I was sleeping under the same roof as my very own executioner. When I first met Chloe, she was incredibly vibrant, deeply affectionate, and completely magnetic. We spent our first 2 years of marriage completely wrapped up in each other. She was spontaneous, constantly initiating intimacy, and leaving sweet notes in my briefcase before I left for the office. Our upper-middle-class suburban home was constantly filled with laughter, warmth, and the promise of a long future together. Then, exactly 3 years ago, a heavy, freezing door simply slammed shut. There was no massive argument, no tragic family event, no warning sign whatsoever. She just stopped touching me entirely. When I tried to hold her hand while watching a movie on the couch, she would visibly flinch as if I had burned her skin with a hot iron. "I'm just so overwhelmed with stress, Liam," she would whisper, pulling her heavy sweater tight around her shoulders and backing away. "My hormones are completely out of balance. My freelance work is draining my soul. Please don't make me feel guilty about this right now." I immediately backed off, desperately wanting to be the supportive anchor she needed. I gently suggested couples counseling. She adamantly refused, claiming a therapist would just judge her and make her panic worse. I suggested medical tests. She claimed her holistic doctor said it was just severe, generalized anxiety. So, the guest room became my permanent, lonely residence. Months brutally bled into years. The constant rejection slowly but surely poisoned my self-esteem. I started obsessing over my appearance, my breath, my conversational skills. Was I too needy? Was I not romantic enough? I bought her expensive jewelry, booked surprise weekend getaways, and took over 100% of the household chores just to alleviate her stress. Nothing worked. She became a polite roommate who occasionally allowed a dry peck on the cheek. But here is the most insidious part of the decline. She never let me pull completely away. Whenever I reached my absolute breaking point, whenever the isolation became too agonizing to bear and I brought up the possibility of separation, she would suddenly break down in hysterics. She would sob uncontrollably, clinging to my shirt, begging me not to abandon her in her darkest hour. She played the victim with terrifying, Oscar-worthy precision. I was so blinded by my vows that I couldn't see the invisible leash she had wrapped tightly around my neck. I truly believed I was saving her. I had no idea my so-called distressed wife was already plotting my complete financial ruin. Just last month, the psychological gaslighting reached a terrifying new peak. It was our 5th wedding anniversary. I had spent hours meticulously preparing a candlelit dinner, grilling her favorite cuts of steak, and buying a ridiculously expensive bottle of imported wine. I honestly didn't expect physical intimacy. I just desperately wanted a moment of genuine human connection. When she walked into the kitchen, she looked beautiful, and for a fleeting second, she offered me a warm smile. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms gently around her waist, going in for a simple, innocent hug. She immediately went totally rigid, letting out a sharp gasp as she violently shoved me backward against the counter. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped, her eyes flashing with genuine, unbridled anger. "Why do you always have to pressure me, Liam? Can't we just have one nice evening where you aren't constantly demanding things from my body?" The accusation hit me like a physical punch to the gut. I hadn't demanded anything. I just wanted to hold my wife on our anniversary. But within 10 minutes, the narrative was completely rewritten in her favor. She collapsed onto the living room sofa, hyperventilating and crying loudly about how my constant, suffocating neediness was making her anxiety spiral out of control. She accused me of seeing her as a piece of meat, rather than a struggling human being who needed space. By the end of the night, I was the one down on my knees, sobbing and desperately apologizing for ruining our special evening. Have you ever been manipulated so severely that you stopped trusting your own memory of events? That was my terrifying daily reality. I spent the entire weekend doing all the laundry and deep cleaning the house as penance for my selfish behavior. She eventually forgave me, generously allowing me to pay off her massive credit card bill as a peace offering. I was completely trapped in a psychological prison of my own making, convinced that I was a defective, overbearing monster. I thought she was fragile glass that I kept accidentally breaking with my clumsy, demanding hands. The truth was, she was completely unbreakable, and she enjoyed watching me bleed. The carefully constructed illusion of her trauma would finally shatter on a random Tuesday afternoon. The universe has a strangely brutal way of revealing the truth when you least expect it. It was a miserable Tuesday morning, and I woke up with a vicious stomach bug. Chloe had already left for her part-time consulting job, a job that barely covered her weekly artisan coffee habit, while my demanding corporate salary floated our entire lavish lifestyle. Normally, I would push through the pain and drive to the office, but the nausea was blinding. I texted my boss that I was taking a sick day and stumbled downstairs to find some heavy-duty aspirin. The master bathroom medicine cabinet was completely empty. I checked the kitchen drawers, but there was nothing. That left only one place, Chloe's home office. This specific room was strictly off-limits to me. She claimed it was her safe sanctuary, a quiet place where she could meditate and manage her crippling anxiety without any external triggers or male energy. The door was usually deadbolt, but in her rush to leave that morning, she had surprisingly forgotten to lock it. It was slightly ajar. I pushed the door open, feeling a strange, heavy spike of guilt just for stepping over the threshold. The room was absolutely pristine, smelling faintly of lavender and expensive perfume. I opened her top desk drawer, pushing aside colorful highlighters and neat stacks of sticky notes, frantically searching for a stray bottle of painkillers. Instead, my fingers brushed against something hard and uneven at the very back of the drawer. It was a cleverly disguised false bottom. My heart immediately started pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I pressed down firmly on the corner of the thin wooden insert, and it popped up, revealing a dark, hidden compartment underneath. Sitting perfectly in the center was a small, black, leather-bound journal. There was no physical lock on it. I stared at the book, my breath hitching in my throat. Every fiber of my being told me to close the drawer, to respect her boundaries, to maintain the fragile peace of our broken marriage. But a tiny, neglected voice in the back of my mind screamed at me to pick it up. I needed to finally know the truth. With trembling hands, I flipped to the very first page and began to read my doom. The black leather was smooth and oddly warm under my fingertips. I sank into Chloe's expensive ergonomic desk chair, the silence of the empty house suddenly feeling incredibly heavy and suffocating. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady my trembling hands, and opened the dark cover. The very first entry was dated exactly 3 years ago, almost to the exact week our physical relationship abruptly ended. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, neat and methodical, completely devoid of the chaotic anxiety she constantly projected to the world. I finally did it. The very first line read, "I convinced Liam that my anxiety is triggered by his touch." It was almost too easy. The man is so pathetic, so desperate to be a hero, that he swallowed the entire story without a single question. Now I don't have to endure his repulsive hands on me ever again, and I still get to keep the limitless credit cards and the big house. The dark ink blurred as my eyes filled with hot, stinging tears. I felt like I was violently free-falling through space. I flipped the page, my stomach fiercely churning with nausea. She didn't write a single word about stress, or hormones, or deep emotional trauma. She wrote about me with a level of pure, unadulterated disgust that completely defied human comprehension. He bought me a diamond necklace today to apologize for trying to kiss me in the kitchen. Another entry coldly detailed. I almost laughed right in his stupid face. He works so incredibly hard to pay for a life I am actively planning to escape. My chest tightened so severely, I honestly thought I was having a massive heart attack. 3 years of humiliating celibacy. 3 years of crushing self-doubt. 3 years of carrying the entire financial and emotional weight of our marriage. All of it was a meticulously orchestrated theatrical performance. I was nothing but a highly profitable mark in a devastatingly long con. But the most destructive blow was yet to come, waiting quietly for me just a few pages deeper into the dark, evil journal. I was about to discover exactly who she was replacing me with behind my back. I sat paralyzed in the silent office, the air suffocating as I continued reading the brutal, surgical dissection of my marriage. Have you ever watched a devastating car crash in slow motion? That was my broken mind processing the next few pages. Chloe mercilessly mocked my pathetic, desperate attempts at romance. She detailed how my anniversary dinner made her skin crawl, laughing in ink about how easily she had flipped the script to make me the abusive villain. But the deepest, most lethal knife twist was the revelation of Damon. Damon was Chloe's proudly proclaimed gay best friend. He was a stylish, sarcastic, high-end real estate agent who was practically a permanent fixture in our home. I had paid for his expensive dinners, helped him move furniture, and even let him use my luxury car for his client meetings. I trusted him implicitly because Chloe insisted he was her absolutely safe emotional outlet. The diary ripped that comfortable illusion to absolute shreds. Damon came over today while Liam was slaving away at the office. A recent entry detailed with sickening glee. We spent the whole afternoon in the master bed. It is so intoxicating having a real, dominant man touch me, right on the expensive sheets Liam pays for. Damon is brilliant. The gay best friend cover is flawlessly executing. Liam is so clueless, he practically begs Damon to keep me company. We laughed about his stupidity until we literally cried. I violently threw up in the small metal wastebasket next to the desk. My wife wasn't just having a casual affair. She was parading her lover through our home, sleeping with him in my bed, and mocking my blinding, unconditional loyalty. Damon wasn't a friend. He was a vicious parasite. They had weaponized my modern tolerance and my deep trust, using the modern facade of a platonic friendship to conduct a filthy, deceitful romance right under my nose. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, my vision swimming with a dangerous, volatile cocktail of profound grief and boiling, volcanic rage. I wanted to burn the house down. I wanted to confront them both. But the next entry forced me to freeze. I realized they weren't just stealing my pride. They were executing a massive financial heist. The diary wasn't just a sick record of infidelity. It was a highly detailed criminal ledger. Chloe's entries quickly shifted from mocking my physical presence to meticulously detailing her aggressive financial extraction strategy. Liam got his massive year-end bonus today. She wrote on a date from exactly 6 months ago. I threw a fake, hyperventilating panic attack about our future security, and he immediately transferred $40,000 into the joint savings. Damon and I moved it to the LLC account this morning. Only $100,000 left to go before we can safely close on the luxury townhouse. I frantically scrambled to open my phone, pulling up our joint banking application. For years, I had allowed Chloe to fully manage the transfer of our savings, trusting her completely with our future. I looked at the current balance. It was drastically, horrifyingly lower than it should have been. The diary detailed exactly how she executed the theft: small, consistent, untraceable withdrawals masked as therapy expenses, medical bills, and holistic anxiety retreats, combined with large chunks of my corporate bonuses funneled directly into a hidden crypto wallet and a shell company managed entirely by Damon. Because Damon was a licensed real estate agent, he had the perfect, legitimate cover to structure the purchase of a secret townhouse under a fake LLC name. They were using my grueling, soul-crushing 60-hour work weeks to finance their perfect, debt-free love nest. She was planning to drain my accounts completely dry, file for a sudden divorce, claim half of our remaining marital assets, and move straight into a house I had unknowingly paid for. The sheer, terrifying scale of her sociopathy left me absolutely paralyzed in the desk chair. This wasn't a tragic mistake. This wasn't a fleeting moment of weakness. This was a calculated, multi-year conspiracy to utterly destroy my life for her own massive financial gain. The fragile woman I vowed to love and protect was an absolute monster, and she was currently holding a sharpened knife right against my throat. I suddenly heard the unmistakable mechanical hum of the garage door opening below me. The monster was finally home, and I had exactly 10 seconds to hide the evidence. Pure adrenaline flooded my veins. I slammed the small black diary shut, shoved it frantically back into the hidden compartment, and jammed the false wooden bottom into place. I threw the colorful highlighters back over it in a messy pile, closed the drawer, and practically sprinted out of the office, quietly pulling the heavy door shut just as I heard her expensive heels clicking on the hardwood floor downstairs. I dove onto the living room couch, quickly pulling a thick blanket over my chest, desperately trying to regulate my ragged, panicked breathing. "Liam, why are you home so early?" Chloe called out, her voice dripping with that familiar, sickeningly fragile innocence. She walked into the room, holding an iced matcha latte, looking like the absolute picture of suburban perfection. "Stomach bug," I croaked out, forcing the most excruciatingly painful, fake smile of my entire life. "I threw up earlier, just trying to rest on the couch." She stopped a few feet away, her beautiful face instantly twisting in mock disgust and deep concern. "Oh no, please don't get me sick, Liam. You know my immune system completely crashes when my anxiety is high. I'll definitely sleep in the guest room tonight." It took every single ounce of willpower in my soul not to leap off the couch and scream the terrifying truth right in her face. The agonizing difficulty of smiling, of nodding subserviently while looking directly at the woman who was gleefully destroying my life, felt like swallowing shards of broken glass. "Of course, honey. I don't want to stress you out at all," I whispered. I watched her nod approvingly and walked gracefully up the stairs. In that precise, horrifying moment, the heartbroken, devoted husband officially died. The man left shivering on the couch was cold, fiercely calculated, and ready for all-out war. I realized that screaming and crying would only give her the upper hand. She desperately wanted a messy, emotional breakdown so she could play the terrified victim in court. I couldn't just fight her. I had to completely dismantle her. I needed a ruthless professional to help me build an inescapable legal trap for my wife. The very next morning, under the carefully constructed guise of an emergency dentist appointment, I walked into the sleek, intimidating downtown office of Nora Vance. Nora was a high-end, terrifyingly expensive divorce attorney with a well-earned reputation for being an absolute shark in the courtroom. She didn't do messy emotional settlements. She executed surgical legal strikes. I sat in her glass-walled conference room and laid out everything I had read in the hidden diary. I expected genuine sympathy, but Nora just stared at me with cold, calculating eyes over her designer reading glasses. "A diary is a fantastic emotional roadmap, Liam," Nora said, her voice sharp and completely devoid of pity. "But it is practically worthless in a complex financial fraud case." She can easily claim it was a fictional creative writing exercise or a dramatic manifestation of her severe mental illness. To absolutely crush her and legally reclaim your stolen assets, we need undeniable, hard proof. Nora laid out the brutal, unforgiving reality of my situation. I needed concrete bank records tracing the stolen funds perfectly, I needed the exact legal name of the hidden LLC Damon had created. And most importantly, I needed high-definition, irrefutable evidence of the physical affair occurring inside the marital home to leverage the strict morality clauses in our state's asset division laws. You have to go back in there, Nora instructed, sliding a yellow legal pad across the table. You have to be the perfect, groveling, pathetic husband. You cannot show a single ounce of anger. You will become a ghost in your own home, quietly gathering ammunition until the trap is fully set. If she suspects you know the truth, she will empty the crypto wallets and burn all the evidence in 10 minutes. The mission was terrifyingly clear and incredibly dangerous. I had to sleep under the same roof as my worst enemy and smile warmly while she actively plotted my funeral. I took a deep breath, walked back into my house, and began the dangerous hunt. Over the next 3 agonizing weeks, I completely mastered the dark art of psychological warfare. I played the role of the oblivious, supportive husband so perfectly it literally made me sick to my stomach. I cooked her healthy dinners. I apologized constantly for my mere existence. And I gave her and Damon plenty of safe space when he came over to comfort her during her fake panic attacks. But the second she dropped her guard, I went to work. I became a phantom in the house. When Chloe took her long, luxurious evening showers, I would slip silently into the bedroom, grab her unlocked phone, and photograph absolutely everything. I captured the vile, mocking text messages between her and Damon. I photographed the digital transfer confirmations showing exactly how my corporate bonuses were converted into Ethereum and moved to Damon's private wallet. Every single night, while she slept peacefully in the master bedroom and I laid awake in the guest room, I forwarded the damning evidence to Nora's highly secure server. I spent countless hours digging through public real estate records until I finally found the smoking gun, Blue Horizon Holdings LLC, registered directly under Damon's name. A quick property search revealed they had already placed a massive $120,000 down payment on a beautiful, modern townhouse across town. The paper trail was finally coming together perfectly. I had the exact dates, the hidden account numbers, and the staggering total of $145,000 in stolen funds. I also purchased hidden, motion-activated micro cameras and installed them discreetly in the master bedroom and the living room. It was legally risky, but Nora assured me we desperately needed the ultimate leverage. Watching the secret footage on my laptop at work, seeing Damon and my wife tangled in my bed, laughing cruelly at my expense, was a special kind of psychological torture. But every agonizing video clip was another solid nail in her meticulously crafted coffin. The evidence was stacking up perfectly, forming an ironclad weapon. But my flawless covert operation almost completely unraveled because of one tiny, stupid miscalculation. I was getting way too confident, and that blinding arrogance nearly cost me absolutely everything. One evening, while Chloe was out getting her nails done, I snuck back into her locked office to check the diary for any new, critical updates on the townhouse closing date. I quickly read the latest entry, put the book back in the compartment, and left the room. 20 minutes after she got home, she stormed heavily down the stairs, her face pale and her eyes wide with frantic, dangerous suspicion. She marched right up to me in the kitchen, clutching her chest in a textbook display of manufactured panic. "Did you go into my sanctuary, Liam?" she demanded, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "My silver pen is always on the left side of the desk. I always leave it on the right today. Were you snooping in my safe space?" My heart stopped dead in my chest. If she checked the false bottom right now, the gig was entirely up. She would instantly realize the trap was closing and drain all the accounts immediately. I had to neutralize the massive threat instantly. I dropped the dish towel, widening my eyes in perfectly feigned panic, and rushed over to her. "Oh my God, Chloe, I am so incredibly sorry," I stammered, raising my hands defensively. "I was looking for the warranty for the blender, and I just peeked in to see if you left it on the desk. I didn't touch anything else, I swear. Please don't be upset. I know how much your safe space means to you." I forced a single, pathetic tear into my eye, perfectly mimicking the beaten-down husband she despised so much. She stared at me for 10 agonizing seconds, intensely searching my face for any hint of deception. Slowly, the panic faded into a look of absolute, dripping contempt. "You are so suffocating, Liam," she sneered, turning on her heel in disgust. I need Damon to come over right now to calm me down. I had successfully deflected the disaster. It was the perfect opening for the final, devastating phase of my master revenge plan. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table and nervously cleared my throat, playing my pathetic part to absolute perfection. "Chloe, honey," I said softly, looking down at my coffee mug. "My firm is sending me on a mandatory, week-long software conference in Chicago starting this Thursday. I tried everything to get out of it, but they insisted I go." I clearly watched the immediate spark of wicked joy flash behind her eyes, which was quickly masked by a heavy, theatrical sigh of fake anxiety. "A whole week? You know how incredibly hard it is for me to be alone in this big house with my panic attacks, Liam," she whined perfectly. "I suppose I can ask Damon to stay over in the guest room to help me manage my severe stress while you're gone." "That would be wonderful," I smiled warmly, fighting the intense urge to violently vomit. "I'm so glad you have such a supportive best friend to lean on." The bait was fully taken. On Thursday, I packed my suitcase, kissed her cold cheek, and drove toward the airport. But I never got on a plane. Instead, I drove straight to a cheap, anonymous motel 2 towns over. I immediately called Nora, confirming that the trap was fully armed. Nora had arranged for a licensed private investigator to monitor the house, ensuring Damon's car was parked safely in the driveway overnight. More importantly, she had secured a ruthless legal process server and an emergency court order that instantly froze all of the LLC's assets, the crypto wallets, and our joint banking accounts. Chloe and Damon were currently celebrating their impending freedom and massive wealth in my bed, completely oblivious to the fact that they were legally locked in a concrete cage. I spent 3 full days sitting in that dingy motel room, staring blankly at the ceiling, feeling the last remaining shreds of my old life burn away into ash. When Monday morning finally arrived, I put on my best, sharpest suit. I drove back to my own house to finally introduce my wife to the real me. I pulled up to the house at exactly 9 a.m. on the dot. Damon's sleek, expensive sports car was parked right in my driveway. The private investigator gave me a subtle, confirming nod from an unmarked sedan parked across the street. The massive, intimidating legal process server stepped out of his vehicle and walked purposefully up to the front porch right behind me. I didn't bother knocking. I unlocked the front door and walked directly into the foyer, my heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet house. I could clearly hear soft, arrogant laughter and the clinking of coffee mugs coming from the bright kitchen. I walked quickly around the corner, the massive process server lingering just a few steps behind me in the shadows. Chloe was wearing my favorite bathrobe, sitting comfortably on the expensive marble counter, while Damon stood intimately between her legs, gently stroking her hair. They were sipping espresso, looking exactly like the perfect, wealthy suburban couple they thought they were. "Good morning," I said, my voice eerily calm and entirely devoid of any emotion. They both violently jumped. Chloe practically fell off the marble counter, her beautiful face draining of all color in a split second. "Liam, what are you doing here?" she shrieked, frantically pulling the robe tight around her body. "You're supposed to be in Chicago. Conference got canceled." I lied incredibly smoothly. I walked deliberately over to the kitchen island and slammed a massive, 3-inch thick legal binder down onto the granite counter. Next to it, the process server stepped forward and dropped a thick manila envelope directly into Chloe's trembling hands. "Chloe Davis, you have been officially served," the massive man rumbled before turning around and walking out the front door. Damon stared at me, his arrogant smirk completely wiped away by absolute, terrifying confusion. Chloe stared down at the manila envelope, her hands shaking violently as she pulled out the devastating divorce petition. But the real devastation was waiting inside the heavy binder I had dropped on the counter. "What is this? Liam, are you absolutely crazy?" Chloe screamed, her fake victim mask completely disintegrating into pure, vicious panic. "You can't do this to me." I calmly opened the heavy binder. "Let's see," I said casually, flipping a page. "We have 72 pages of wire transfers. We have high-definition photographs of your encrypted text messages. Oh, and my personal favorite." I pulled out a printed transcript of her diary. I looked her dead in the eye and read aloud. "The man is so pathetic, so desperate to be a hero. I don't have to endure his repulsive hands on me ever again. Chloe loudly gasped, physically staggering backward against the expensive cabinets as if I had shot her. Damon puffed out his chest, stepping forward to play the brave tough guy. You're sick, Liam, spying on your wife. Damon barked. You don't have anything. We're closing on the townhouse tomorrow, and she's taking half of everything you own. I couldn't help it. I laughed right in his smug face. You might want to check your bank apps, Damon. I smiled coldly. Damon frowned, pulling out his phone. I watched the exact moment his world collapsed. Wait, Damon stammered, his eyes going wide with terror. The LLC account is frozen. The crypto wallets are locked. What did you do? My lawyer secured an emergency injunction, I explained coldly. Every single cent you stole is frozen pending a criminal fraud investigation. You have no money. You have no townhouse. And you're both facing felony embezzlement charges. Damon spun around, his face suddenly twisted in furious rage, screaming at Chloe for being sloppy and dragging him into a massive criminal trap. The perfect lovers instantly turned into feral animals, violently screaming at each other in my kitchen while their stolen future burned to the ground. I poured myself a cup of their expensive espresso and watched my enemies destroy each other. The legal fallout was an absolute, bloody massacre. Because I had irrefutable, undeniable proof of her massive financial fraud and the affair, Nora absolutely decimated Chloe in family court. I kept the house, the retirement accounts, and every single penny she had tried to steal from me. To avoid federal prison time for the embezzlement charges, Damon was forced to testify against her, completely throwing his supposed soulmate under the bus to save himself. Chloe was left with absolutely nothing. No money, no lover, and a completely ruined reputation in our affluent social circle. She was forced to move back into her parents' cramped basement in another state. I sold the suburban house 3 months later. The dark memories were simply too toxic to live with. I bought a modern loft in the city, adopted a rescue dog, and finally started over. It has been 2 full years since I dropped that binder on the kitchen counter, and the healing process has been slow but profoundly eye-opening. Surviving severe psychological abuse changes you fundamentally. For years, I allowed a master manipulator to convince me that my genuine desire for love and connection was a flaw, a sickness that needed to be punished. I learned the hardest way possible that true love does not require you to constantly apologize for your own existence. If your partner is deeply isolating you, weaponizing your empathy, or making you feel like a monster for wanting basic affection, you are not the problem. Never ignore that quiet, persistent gut feeling that something is terribly wrong behind closed doors. You are absolutely worthy of a love that is safe, honest, and enthusiastically reciprocated. I finally found my peace the exact moment I stopped trying to politely save the woman who was actively trying to drown me. Sometimes the greatest act of true love you can perform is finally saving your own life.